All right, well, before we get out of here, let's talk about one more thing, Jim, with the upper of cases. And there's a lot of other things happening. We'll talk about Okada and his contract on the experience. But WWE Rivals, let's talk about it because you watched it.
Oh boy, hold on. I have notes over. I didn't know where you were going, what you were doing here. I got notes over here.
Sure sounds like it.
Well, these are notes from
many
previous
pages of
programs.
notes? Yeah, what is going on?
No, I'm trying to get to it.
Are they bound?
I'm trying to get to it. It's on a pad.
Yellow pad?
Well, it's goddamn as brave as the next pad, I'll have you know.
All
I'm
right.
casting aspersions on my pad's guts or intestinal fortitude.
I wanted to know if it was legal size or regulation.
No, it's perfectly legal to have a pad this size, but it's more in the area of regulation than it is in the legal world. That's why I had to flip so many pages. You're talking about the Rivals program with Jake the Snake Roberts and Randy Macho Man Savage, are you not?
That is indeed the one that aired. Yes.
Well, it's an amuse-bouche for the wrestling fan. These Rivals programs, I'm a bigger fan of the Biographies, to be quite honest, because we're focusing on a subject and they can tell a story and they're usually 2 hours and they have more time. The Rivals, it's a 1 hour program. By the time you take the commercials out, you're down to 46 minutes. Then you've got the panel of consisting of people who weren't there or weren't even born whenever whatever they're talking about was taking place, and the talking heads, some of whom, fit the picture, but some of whom are in the same category. So you get to see the old footage. And a lot of this stuff, these topics, have come up in the biographies of these different people. Because, I don't remember whether it was the Jake biography or whether it was the Savage biography that we got the snake bite story told. It's wonderful to keep things like that alive, but I watch these for the old footage and just to remind me how much more intense in every way, whether it was lighthearted or dark and evil or violent or comedic or whatever, everything was more intense, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, as we see from these programs. Then what's the difference, Brian? You're looking at it from more of afar than I am, just because I've been in the middle of it for so long. But why is all this shit? Is it the high definition television? We're getting shit that misses and shit that doesn't look good if it connects to begin with, and no emotion in the promos, and no violence in the struggles, and what is it?
You had people that were over. You had people that were established. And they were never treated too foolishly on TV, even the guys that were kind of, mid-card or below. And because of that, you could bring other people in and slot them in and give them credibility by having them interact with or potentially beat one of these people. A lot of that protocol seemed to have switched over the years. By the time they did this feud in 91, Randy Savage had been there since 85, Jake since 86. And they are two of the more memorable names and personalities of that era. But when you go back and watch one of those Royal Rumbles, it blows you away how many of these guys are like all-time greats. In your eyes, if you grew up during that era, they're just in this match. And they stood out. The crowds were different too. It wasn't just that they were energetic. Look at the makeup of the crowd. Look at who was buying wrestling tickets. There were more kids then. They were still, it seemed like working class people in good seats. You get different reactions. And it's a different kind of fan. It's not just five guys all wearing t-shirts going to the show and sitting next to each other.
And you've made valid points, and every single one of them I agree with everything you said, but that explains the popularity of the talent, them getting over, the crowd reaction then versus now, but it doesn't explain still the actual commission of the act, the actual shit, the match or the angle or what these guys look like they mean it. And again, Savage was one of the all-time, great promos and in the ring, amazing athlete. You can't say enough about all of that stuff, and we've talked about him a million times. Jake had an incredible promo and delivery and psychology in his mind for what he was doing and how he could get over, and he was just a good enough athlete in the ring to pull it off, right? And that's not denigrating anybody, that's just being honest. But it looked, all of these guys from this era, because they got into the wrestling business when it was still the wrestling business, when it was the territories, or when it was at least being trained as such. And there's an element of, we've got to go out and fucking sell this to their approach. They're motivated. Whereas, and I'm not saying nobody does that now, but there's few and far between levels of believable conflict where it looks like these guys are trying to tear their fucking eyeballs out. And it can't just be that the high def TV shows that everybody's missing shit by 1.5 miles and everybody's putting up a hand to block. I look at these things because I spent years training people how to do them without having to put your hand up in front of your face and block every goddamn thing that comes at you.
Randy Savage, by this point, had been wrestling close to 20 years. Maybe a little less, 15 years or so. Jake Roberts, same thing. They're seasoned veterans. They know how to do stuff. Jake Roberts knew how to do more with less than anyone and get away with it. And
that is true.
And the other thing is, to compare modern stuff to then, Randy Savage scripted out a lot of his matches, but he did it so that they worked within the confines of what was happening. Not, let's script it out. Hey, I want to do cool stuff. Well, the referee will have to see it. Who cares? We'll just do it.
Yeah, he didn't write down a list of moves and then figure out an order to do them in. He wrote down a
story in the ring.
A stage play in the ring. Yeah,
that's right. So that's, a difference between the two.
But so I have a couple of observations, and we maybe discuss a couple things about the program. Again, the best part is the old footage, but they took you through the rivalry that they had. And again, when they do everybody's little backstory, Elizabeth was preposterous when they introduced her as a manager. when all of the various managers in the WWF at the time wanted this guy, and they're all standing in the ring, and there's legendary managers and veteran wrestlers and blah blah blah,
and Johnny Valiant.
And Johnny Valiant, yes. And here comes Elizabeth out looking like a beauty pageant contestant, and with just a lost deer in the headlights smile on her face. And he's picked her. How would she manage his career? I'm not saying she was a person devoid of personal worth. I'm saying, why, if you wanted someone to be your wrestling manager, what was her background? It was never presented. Why, in what way she would manage him?
Well, two things. One of my favorite things ever is Bruno Sammartino when she comes out. What is his reaction to her coming out? He goes, "Who is she? Some kind of movie star or something?" A movie star or something? What? What does that even mean? But anyway.
Well, because they probably didn't smart Bruno up, and also he's thinking, what is this? Is this Liz Taylor like I've seen in the movies?
Sophia Loren, who is this? Yes, I don't know. Hey. The other thing is, early on, before they really went with the slightly abusive Randy Savage Elizabeth relationship, whatever you want to call it, she was kind of heelish early on. She helped him cheat. She did things, and then they quickly switched it and made her completely the babe in the woods who Georgie Animal Steel wanted to win the affection of.
Okay, because I don't ever remember even seeing, and of course I was not a regular close watcher of WWF programming during that point in time, but I don't remember ever seeing her interfere except when she got up on the ring to take her dress off or skirt off and distract whoever the fuck for Hogan.
DiBiase and Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura had never seen a pair of legs before. He was just froze.
It was shockingly wearing what she would wear to go to Walmart in this day and age. But anyway, so it's true.
It's true. It would have been one thing if she like flashed him. Like, look at this. That would have blown people's minds in 1988.
Marlena went all the way to the bone for the business, baby, on that Shotgun Saturday night.
She's full of spunk.
So in 1991, Randy Savage lost to the Ultimate Warrior, and they replayed that. And of course, I've never made it a habit of watching Ultimate Warrior matches after the first couple. So to see the way that this prick casually pinned Savage with one foot on his chest makes me hate him even more than already did.
You would hate him even more if you saw what really happened. And I was a kid who loved the Ultimate Warrior, and it was a great match. For him, it was like a 4-star match for the Ultimate Warrior. That and the Hogan match and the Rick Rude stuff were like the best ones. But Randy Savage hits the Warrior, I want to say 5 elbow drops in a row.
Oh, good God.
And then the Warrior kicks out. And the Warrior kicks his ass and pins him with a foot on the chest. And then Randy Savage retires, but Elizabeth's in the crowd and can't take the abuse of Sherry Martel. So she makes the save, and turns out they loved each other all along.
Well, and that's the thing that Vince was, I don't know what his fascination was. And this was for those people, even before any of the story that's out there may have potentially even happened. He kept trying to retire Savage. That's how I ended up doing color on Raw for about 3 months. And 93 was when Savage left the next time he had retired him to the. But anyway, but they do the wedding at SummerSlam in 91, and that's when Liz opens the box with the snake in it. And now Savage can't fight Jake because he's an announcer. And, of course, Jake, this did highlight that before the various chemicals burned whatever parts of his brain, he was so good and smooth and just on top of everything verbally. And they did the reinstate campaign to get reinstated. And that's where they went into the. But again, it's great, this fucking story. Not only that they went to these links for the angle, but also it illustrates Savage. The snake bite deal where Savage came in that afternoon. He's like, brother, you need to take the snake bite first. What? Yeah. And Jake had to let the snake bite him in the locker room. And this is true. This is not Jake having had delusions somewhere in a fever. He had to let the snake bite him first before Savage would do the angle in the ring. Of course, it wasn't pissed off like in the ring and latched on and didn't let go, or I don't think Savage would have gone through with it. But in what other business does this kind of thing take place? Brian, that's why I love it so much.
Ringling Brothers.
I don't even think they had a mandatory snake biting going on at Ringling Brothers. I think there was a snake union there, though.
What if Jake had said no? Like, I'm not going to let this thing bite me. You get out of here. The reason you're doing it is because I wouldn't do it.
Now, I guarantee you that Savage will, I ain't going to do it then, brother. Because he was so paranoid. He had to make sure. Did you love it when Jack Tunney barred all reptiles from ringside?
All reptiles. I barred from. What a personality and charisma from Jack Tunney.
Well, remember, he did his best work in the office behind the scenes. But I had forgotten also, or don't know that I cared to begin with, that when Savage got reinstated, they did the pay-per-view match with him and Jake on this Tuesday in Texas. The comeback, 4 or 5 days after SummerSlam 91, Thanksgiving night. Or not SummerSlam, but Survivor Series 91, Thanksgiving night. Yes, that's what I'm trying. That's why it's Thanksgiving night, because it was Survivor Series. But why did they put that big of a match on this Tuesday in Texas?
No, they put a bigger match. That was also the rematch between Hogan and... Was it Hogan and The Undertaker? Was that
well, yeah, but yes, but I know, but I mean, that was the angle of why they were doing it, because they shot the angle at Survivor Series and were coming. It was an experiment of Vince's to come back that quick with a rematch, but they also loaded it up with goddamn. I would have thought you'd put Savage and Jake on Survivor Series, if just being me, but nevertheless,
if that had worked out really well, we would have never had Raw. We would have just had weekly pay-per-views at that point.
Well, I think that That's an idea that maybe they should have figured out at TNA early on because Vince had tried it and it didn't work, just 2 weeks in a row. And then, at the Rumble, Randy dumped Jake and then jumped over himself to get at Jake. And then they did the Saturday night's main event. And again, the highlights of that, even if Jake and Savage, more violent, but yet safer. Everything I'm seeing them do, I see what they're doing, and it's as safe as you can make these things, and they're executing it well, but it looks more violent. I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, that was the rivalry between all the way from goddamn, I think, the summer of one year to the goddamn February of another year. That's to rival Bobo Brazil and the Sheik kind of feud.
They did have a really fun match in like 86 on Saturday night's main event, but that wasn't even mentioned here. And that was Rivals. What a wonderful panel, too. Freddie Prinze Jr. in the investigation room.
Yes.
With the other forensic wrestlers.
Do they make, when everybody comes down to sit at that table, do they spray them down with the fucking fungicide or whatever? They do the decontamination thing and then they sit in there?
It's just a shame that they don't say anything. They say nothing. It's like Tony Schiavone times 4. Or 5, I guess. But Freddie Prinze is just the host of that group.